So my last name Judy. People sometimes call me short for Jew, like one Jew. So I just got a Jewish star. So yeah, I'm not Jewish though.
There's no better way to send it to us here at the 2020 NFL Combine than that. I'm going to say colorful quote. Hayden Winks. I'm Josh Norris. That's Hayden Winks.
How's it going?
Yeah, that was early in the day here. Hayden here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver.
Very good.
Very good.
Very good.
From Alabama.
Right.
Certainly a colorful quote that we weren't expecting here on Radio Row Media Area.
Yeah, we got started with the day. We'll get to Joe Burrow later. Kind of was a little tense for a second, and then you get over here, and then just the mood lightens up. So
it was. We appreciate that. We're not going to dive any more into it because I certainly don't want to add my 2 cents onto Jerry Jeudy's quote. We've got a great show today for you. Look, the schedule has changed here at the NFL Combine. So really what I've learned that Tuesday now is just head coaches and GM press conferences, along with obviously wide receiver and quarterback pressers. You and I put our brains together and came up with the 10 meaningful news nuggets that we picked up during our time here during those coach pressers. We'll get to those in the second half of the show. But actually in the first half, Hayden Winks, we had a nice little sit-down talk here with Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott. Let's kick it there. Joining us now, head coach of the Buffalo Bills. His name is Sean McDermott. Sean, thanks for being here. You've been on the job now for 3 years. I was wondering about this since we landed this interview. What is the team like now compared to the vision you had when you took the job 3 years ago?
Well, we're certainly closer to the bullseye of that vision, but and really until you win, and what Kansas City was able to do this year under Andy Reid, we're always chasing it. And even when we do win, we're going to be continuing to chase it. I mean, really, we want to be, continue to build a championship way about Buffalo, and not just on our football team, but in the entire city. And we've got a passionate fan base. We've got a good young football team of a core nucleus of good young players, driven with some leadership, with some older players as well, that I think the future is bright in Buffalo.
Let's talk about some of those players, because from the outside looking in, you obviously had a ton of success as a defensive coordinator with the Carolina Panthers. And now, after, again, 3 years in the job, it certainly seems like you've kind of followed the same blueprint in a lot of ways, like athletic linebackers, interior defensive linemen that get up the field, really talented secondary. Is that fair to say? Is there kind of like a blueprint and a type of player you want defensively?
Well, it's been neat, because I've been able to bring Brandon Beane with me from Carolina to Buffalo, and so that vision of what we saw, that blueprint, if you will, and then what we've been able to do is take that and then add to it in terms of what we believe in and how we felt like made it better. And so, not that we're perfect, but what we've been able to do in a short amount of time has really been fostered by bringing in the right people, not only on the player level and end of things, but also on the staff.
You talked about the Chiefs earlier, and of course they were super pass heavy. Do you think that teams are going to need to pass more? Do you think that you can win with Josh Allen, Devin Singletary up the middle type of game?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The game is always changing and evolving. Years ago I worked for a defensive coordinator named Jim Johnson, and Jim was never worried about Emmitt Smith having 200 and some odd yards as long as Troy Aikman only had 150 or whatever, and that was hard to do. But to your point about pass versus run, I think at the end of the day you've got to do what's right for your team and in that particular game based on the many variables that we experience.
I know during Combine Week you get asked a lot about upcoming free agents, the upcoming draft class, and that's probably not fair to you. So I actually want to ask about a player who's already on your roster, and if you kind of tell us the story of how he landed with your team during the draft process, that'd be awesome. I think Matt Milano is one of the more underrated linebackers when at his peak in the NFL. What stood out to you during his draft process, and kind of what was the story of him landing on your team?
Well, when we first got to Buffalo, Matt was in our first draft class, and so we were in round 5, I believe it was, and we had identified Matt as kind of fitting the mold of the athletic linebackers that we look for, and Matt had played one of those positions in college that was kind of like a safety position at Boston College, and so we saw Matt's athleticism in space and thought that that could translate well into our system in Buffalo. And honestly, we thought early on that Matt would be a special teams player, and man, with Matt's hard work and what he's been able to do with Coach Babbage as his linebacker coach and Leslie Frazier as the coordinator, it's been really cool to watch Matt develop in these last 3 seasons.
Going to Devin Singletary, we were all very excited. Averaged over 5 yards a carry this season. Talk about his goal line role. Frank Gore took, I think, 61% of the inside the 5 carries. Is that something you can see Devin Singletary doing, or is there going to be somebody else that walks in the building?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We're constantly evaluating every position. In this case, the running back position. Man, we were blessed to have Frank on board last year, and what a just cool moment for me as a coach, just to be around and watch his habits and the way that he worked day in and day out, and the great leadership that gave our football team. And man, we'll never be able to repay that. We'll see what happens with Frank in his career and where we'll go this offseason. But I know this Frank will forever. I'll be forever indebted to Frank for what he brought to the Buffalo Bills this past year.
You know, a lot of us viewed John Brown as an extremely talented player during his time with the Cardinals and then with the Ravens. A lot of unfortunate events that led to him missing time at those locations. Yeah. But then, I mean, you invested in him highly, and he paid off tremendously. What level of confidence did you have? Because it was a 3-year contract, I believe, that you thought, okay, these are questions. This is a super talented player that we think can work out for us.
Well, it's really cool to see what he was able to do this year. He and Cole Beasley both had career years in Buffalo, and that's really what we're trying to build, is that players play their best or become the best version of themselves in Buffalo. Because of our culture. And so when you look at Cole and John, in this case, both, they were able to do that this past season. And John was a guy that we knew a little bit about. We tried to get him the year prior in free agency, and he went to Baltimore. And then we played Baltimore, and we were able to watch him up close and personal again. And then to be able to then see him again and really to target John again, I think that really spoke volumes to John about our interest in him. And I also think it spoke volumes about who John is as a person, because he also valued that, where he said, hey, this team wanted me a year ago and they still want me now. And I think that meant something to John, which to me really typifies who John is as a person.
What about Josh Allen? Do you want him to be passing the ball more, keep that running style? Could that last forever? Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, it's I've been around a couple mobile quarterbacks in my career.
Yes,
Donovan McNabb in Philly, and then Cam Newton in Carolina. And though, as much as you love the mobility of those quarterbacks, Josh included, you got to be smart with it. And so you need those quarterbacks healthy. And this is a big, fast, and dangerous league with guys that are coming to take their heads off on every play. And so, I think at the right amount, it's healthy for our offense and our football team.
Your team invested heavily in offensive line last offseason. I mean, heavily, 5 or 6 players. Right. Is there a position like that this year, or do you think your roster is kind of more balanced than it has been in the past?
Well, I think we've added. I don't know if balance is exactly the right word, but I know what you're saying. I think we've grown as a roster on our offense in this case, with room to grow yet, and playmakers to add, and linemen to add that can add to our depth or help protect our quarterback. I mean, we ran the ball extremely well last season. I love our offensive line, the guys that make up our offensive line. I think they help set an identity for our football team. And so, we'll see what the offseason brings and what Brandon has in store for us.
We'll close with this question. I don't know if you know this, but in the football media world, you are widely regarded as perhaps the most in shape head coach in the NFL. Since we are at the NFL Combine, we thought it was only right to ask, if you lined up all 32 NFL coaches, who would you pick to potentially have the best athletic profile of all of them?
Outside of myself, you mean?
Outside of yourself, because of course, put you number one.
I've studied this a little bit, and I was going to start with a couple guys, and I immediately crossed them off because I've watched their waist grow.
Snacks.
Yeah, snacks have been added up. Or it's a business every year where guys add 20 to 30 pounds in the season. So, but no, I think Mike Vrabel, it would give me a good run for my money athletically. He's got a good proportioned build, He's won a couple games in the course of his career as well, so I've got a lot of respect for him as not only as a coach, but also in this case as a physical specimen.
Sean, thanks so much for taking time with us.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
Hayden, what did you think of our time with Sean McDermott?
Really interesting guy. They definitely have a plan over there in Buffalo. It starts from the top as they went through, but it's probably time to be optimistic, really.
Oh, very. I mean, 2 playoff seasons in 3 years. Sean McDermott, and I mentioned this in the interview with him, he certainly has a vision, and he certainly has types and how he wants to run his team. And, for so many years, they were like a roller coaster, right? They were up and down, up and down.
Rex Ryan.
And I was talking with someone who's close to the Bengals, and they were saying that basically now they're just like a 7 at all times.
Right.
They're very consistent. Nothing is too up, too down. And I think that's important. And it does go to show having continuity sometimes goes through friendships with McDermott and Brandon Beane. And so far, the payoff has been extraordinary.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think ultimately it's going to end up how good could Josh Allen be. But I think even with his inconsistencies, the rest of the team, everything else is consistent. So
what's funny is, you just brought it up, like how from a team perspective they are so consistent. It's very mellow. Yet they have the quarterback who might be the most high variance quarterback in the league,
yes,
not named Jameis Winston. Someone who has the spectacular in his tool belt every single play, but also has these mind-numbing mistakes of why did you do that? And it's interesting because I think when we look at these teams, and it kind of shows up when we hear them speak this week, that so often the identity of a team comes from the head coach. I think the Bills are like that for everyone except for Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Even the GM, they're very similar people, and I think you're just going to see it. Hopefully Josh Allen can take a leap forward because the team could compete for the AFC East Championship this year with the Patriots. Who knows?
I think that it's ripe for a time to challenge finally for that spot. I'm also maybe a Bills fan now. They've been super kind to us down here. We actually have a Brandon Beane interview tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that as well. All right, I mentioned at the top of the show, this we're going to lay out the rest. The 10 things that we learned today, Tuesday here in the Convention Center at the NFL Combine. These aren't in any order, Hayden, but these are the 10 things that we thought were most important. Let's start with number 1, Joe Burrow saying he will play for whatever team drafts him.
To go play for them? Yeah, I'm not going to not play. I'm a ball player. Whoever picks me, I'm going to go show up.
Whoever picks me, I'm going to show up. I think that's it. This has been a topic for quite some time, Hayden, yet thankfully the Combine is here to smash some narratives.
Yeah, and we kind of run into this every year. We go back to Kyler Murray last year with the baseball thing, and that kind of dragged on for a while. The media kind of ran with this narrative that he doesn't want to show up, he has leverage and all this stuff. Immediately comes up to the podium, puts all that to bed. So as long as nothing tragic happens, Burrow's going to be the top pick.
And it was interesting, even how he said it, Burrow was mentioning how he didn't want to speak in declarations because he didn't even know if Cincinnati liked him at the time.
Right.
That it was kind of twisted that he didn't like Cincinnati, but he was just kind of uncertain if they liked him that much. He obviously has a lot of ties to the Ohio area. Mentioned that his 2 best friends growing up are big Cincinnati Bengals fans. So that stood out to me that I think we're heading towards the most likely outcome here, that Joe Burrow is going to be the number 1 overall.
Yeah, I don't think the other teams with quarterbacks have the ammo to sweep the Bengals off their feet to go with him. So I think it's ultimately going to be Joe Burrow as the first pick. One thing that was interesting, he did reference A.J. Green.
Yes.
Wanting A.J. Green. I mean, come on, Bengals. You got to find a way. Get Burrow, his alpha guy. You have John Ross, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. The rest of the offense, you can win with that.
Isn't it kind of up to A.J. Green, though? I mean, unless he gets franchise tag or transition tag or one of those, he might be gone. I mean, if I was sitting in A.J. Green's position, wouldn't you think this? That, like, maybe the grass is greener.
The grass is greener.
I mean, outside of Cincinnati, maybe the grass is greener. And, during his 20s, he has been one of the best receivers in the NFL, but has never been on a consistently winning team. And while, yes, we mentioned John Ross, we mentioned Tyler Boyd, we mentioned obviously Joe Mixon, who down the stretch is one of the best running backs in the NFL, that's a pretty good skill position player situation to keep with Joe Burrow. It's still not a team that I think can absolutely contend the AFC North next year.
Right. You have issues on the defense and the offensive line, and we still don't know that much about this coaching staff. But from a fantasy perspective, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, maybe Joe Burrow reaches them to that next level. So we'll see.
Burrow also talked about his process a lot. I think it's always fascinating. I kept mentioning this to you and whoever we're talking to over in the press conference area, that there's such a difference in prospects of when they are like 23 and 24 years old versus 21 years old. And I think we can just look in the mirror, think of ourselves in that same situation, just how much more comfortable you are in front of a group of people answering questions like this. I mean, he was so cool and calm in those moments and seemed very thoughtful. Also looked up to Drew Brees a lot and just mentioned process, and how when he's very confident when he plays just based on the preparation he has. And all that lines up for him to being a quality player once entering the NFL.
Yeah, with the older prospects, you're definitely getting a year one player that can probably go in there and have less rookie struggles compared to a 21-year-old quarterback like we saw with Dwayne Haskins. So I'm excited for the Bengals for this year.
Number 2 on a ranking that absolutely does not matter, Cam Newton, I guess in this case, Matt Rule is unbelievably excited to work with QB1.
I figured I'd address that right off the bat. From my perspective, I'm unbelievably excited to get a chance to work with Cam. You come in from the outside, you don't really, you kind of know as a fan, but just on a personal note, getting to know him, I mean, he is a diligent guy. He's working so hard, both in Atlanta and in Carolina, to get himself healthy. You meet him, he's this massive man, impressive man, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him. I've enjoyed getting to sit down in the cafeteria when he comes by, sitting down in my office. I think he's doing a great job, and for me, the way he balances being a great father, the way he balances being a great quarterback, and the way the things he's done in the community are really, really important. So
on the final year of his most recent deal, Cam Newton right now is owed $21 million. Panthers can move on, just a $2 million loss. Hayden Winks, do you buy what Matt Rule is selling right now, that Cam Newton almost certainly will be his quarterback next season?
Well, the Panthers can go in two different directions. It's very easy for them to restart, new coach, new owner. They're redoing basically everything. They talked about the facilities being redone. So they can move on immediately. But I think they want to see Cam Newton for one season. Maybe they get a second season out of him. The upside with Cam Newton is just so hard to move on from. But I don't see a roster that you can win with this year, even with a healthy Cam Newton.
No, 2020 is going to be a rough season for the Panthers. They're in this weird situation where, ownership that's fairly new, ownership that is finally making their first decisions, and all those decisions have been ingrained in process. And all Matt Rule talks about is process. All when I read that P word, if I'm a Panthers supporter, is that 2020 is going to be rough and that this is something that they need to start from the ground up. I don't know, and I love Cam Newton. If bring back, a 31-year-old quarterback on multiple years of injuries, paying a lot of money to, along with still working with rookie contract Christian McCaffrey,
right,
is the right approach, and one that ultimately is going to happen when they're suiting up in August.
And going back with Rule, even at Baylor, it took a year before they fully bought in. Then they went crazy. I'm kind of conflicted. I can see another team trading for Cam Newton, maybe like a second round, third round pick. I don't know what is going to be on the market. And then the other thing is the Panthers have the 6th overall pick or 7th overall pick.
7th, yep.
They're in range for Justin Herbert, Jordan Love potentially, Tua if he falls. So we'll see.
It's notable that the comment that Matt Rule made was before any questions that the media had. He wanted to come out and immediately say the statement. Obviously, after that, he was bombarded by questions from the local Panthers media, just saying, okay, are you confident that he's going to be on the roster in July and when training camp rolls around? He basically said yes to all of it. And tell me if you heard it wrong, but it's kind of a Rorschach test in some ways, just of how you feel if you buy into, coach speak in this way. I am, because, I'm not so sure that someone as new as Matt Rule is going to lie in this situation, but I could be totally wrong with that read.
Yeah, and they have the other pieces around him. Curtis Samuel, we're hoping that he can get there, but DJ Moore proved himself last year. Christian McCaffrey, we'll see what Ian Thomas can do, but there's some pieces that they can build around, but this might be a 3-4 year build and not playing for 2021 or 2021.
Let's move on to number 3. Kyle Smith, who is now the director of player personnel for the Washington Redskins. I actually asked this question. I asked Kyle Smith, because Scott Turner, speaking of the Panthers, coming from Carolina, 2 seasons with a back of over 100-plus receptions if the Redskins have a back on their roster with that type of ability, that type of pass-catching ability. And Kyle Smith, who we finally learned what he looked like, immediately jumped to Darius Geis's name and said, because Smith's been in that organization for, I think, over a decade now. Obviously, evaluated Geis and Peterson when they brought him in as a free agent, even Bryce Love. That he thought that Geis, even if he didn't catch a lot of passes at LSU and so far during his career, has those skills. That's music to our ears, right, Hayden?
Right.
Because we want someone that's in a position to potentially catch 50-plus passes to go along with the running rate and running style that Darius Geis has.
The one thing he did keep saying, though, was if healthy. And that's the big question mark. And I'm sure when we start talking about fantasy drafts later in the summer, Darius Geis is going to be a guy that you probably take as your RB3 and roll the dice as a flex option. But there is a path to him catching some passes. We'll see what they do in the draft. They bring another guy in. We'll see if Bryce Love is actually healthy, but I'm not sure if I'm fully buying this.
And I'm not saying that, obviously, Scott Turner is going to run the exact same offense that he had in Carolina, but that's just what we're used to. Right. You know, he's used to having a running back that's on the field 90+% of the time, catching pass after pass after pass. I don't know about you. I'm a big fan of Darius Geis. I mean, the game actually had against the Panthers last year where he just truck stick people in the open field. Again, we just haven't, though, seen it for 16 games. And that's exactly what we've seen from Christian McCaffrey year after year. And so it's a big difference.
And with Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State when he was playing his best, a lot of quick passes, get him to his playmakers. Maybe Darius Geis can be that guy. This
isn't totally fair, but I don't know if they are 100% sold on Dwayne Haskins right now. This, like, just from perceiving these press conferences and being here in this moment, it wouldn't be complete shock if they do select a quarterback at that early
this year.
This year.
Really?
If they fall in love with someone, because they're at number 2.
Yeah, no, they're at number 2. I think ultimately it's going to be Chase Young. Maybe they trade down. I would be fully surprised.
But if
I think
you
next
fall
year,
in love
next
with
year.
if you fall in love with Tua, why not draft Tua at 2?
Right.
I mean, it's a possibility.
No, that's a possibility.
It just is not being mentioned as a possibility right now. All right, let's move on to number 4. Rick Spielman literally laughed out loud when asked about Stefon Diggs being traded. I have brought up this trade consideration in the past. I'll read you the exact quote. There is no reason to anticipate that Stefon Diggs is not going to be a Minnesota Viking. Again, that's from Vikings general manager Rick Spielman. This is a name that's been brought up a lot during the season, a lot so far this offseason. And I don't think in a way that, you know, was unprofessional of us, Hayden, because it certainly sounds like there are moments and times when Stefon Diggs is frustrated with his own situation.
Well, you see it on the field and off the field. I mean, he's a weirdo on Twitter. So that's where a lot of the speculation comes from.
I feel like Stefon Diggs, if he even had Instant Messenger, was one of those people that like left an away message with a music quote that like just stated his feelings, because that's what he's doing on Twitter now.
Yeah, he's very vocal about it. The one thing about the Vikings is they're trying to win now. They have a roster that's almost there. I think their championship window's probably closed, but they can't trade away Stefon Diggs. That's they're probably their best offensive player.
I agree. He's their best offensive player and on a very affordable contract. He's only 27 years older, entering his age 27 season. At that point, he only counts $14.5 million, then 15, then 15, then 12 for the next 4 seasons.
That's a great deal.
It's a fantastic deal for one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. All right, let's keep it moving. Number 5. Giants general manager Dave Gettleman on the possibility of trading back from the number 4 overall pick. Quote, "We're open for business." This is a drastic change in what Dave Gettleman has put out in the last, 7 years as a general manager in the NFL?
Yeah, never has traded down before, so this would be, I wouldn't call it a surprise just because everything's lining up. With pick 4, you have a couple teams right behind them that need quarterbacks. We'll see what the Detroit Lions do at pick 3. They're also a trade down candidate. But the Lions need, or the Giants need offensive tackle. We've talked about this class in general. The first 4, maybe 5 guys in this class all could be potential long-term starters. If they traded down a couple spots, even went down to pick 7 to pick 10, they can draft their left tackle or right tackle for the future.
Yeah, I don't buy it until I see it, though. You know, This is exactly the type of statement that is made now. And, you know, I've constantly thought about it. Like, why doesn't someone in Dave Gettleman's position even move back in round 5 for 2 extra 6-rounders? Yeah. And it's because he is so confident in his ability to evaluate that he thinks his evaluation is perfect. He doesn't even entertain the idea that, I might be wrong, so why not have more darts to throw rather than just go and select this player that's at the top of my board right now? And I think that's a weakness as a general manager, just being so overconfident in your ability to not even allow the possibility that you might be wrong. And so far, Dave Gettleman has shown that he is that type.
Well, maybe we'll get the computer folk to get in his ear and maybe change things up. We'll see.
Yeah, he also talked about that quote, but that's another statement for another time. All right, let's move on to number 6. Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn and I believe general manager Tom Telesco both had something to say on running back Austin Ekeler, who is a restricted free agent. So he, unlike Melvin Gordon, is almost certainly coming back to the Chargers. But here's what Anthony Lynn said. He likes using Ekeler as a, quote, tandem player, and that he likes him with another guy. This speaks volumes here, Hayden.
Right. When I was with the Chargers back in 2017, Ekeler hadn't ascended. In like last year, he almost had 1,000 receiving yards. He wasn't quite this player he is now. But even then, we're looking at a 5'10", 200-pound player. It's been a player that we as a fantasy community love, and rightfully so. He's so explosive, one of the most efficient players. The Chargers coaching staff does not want to give him 15, 20 touches every game. I don't think Melvin Gordon's for sure going to be back or anything like that. He's a free agent. He's probably going to go hit the open market. But the Chargers will be either drafting a guy or bringing in like a Carlos Hyde type to run up the middle.
And I believe Lynn did say he wants Melvin Gordon back. Well, look, we would all love one of our best players back, but it's all about money.
Right.
And the money might not match up. It's disappointing, these comments about a player like Austin Ekeler, because we've seen him in a full-time role in spots. We saw at the start of this year, and he's fantastic.
Right.
There's nothing that he's shown on the field to make you think, okay, we can't just use this guy as our primary running back. And, I mean, we talk about this a lot in this podcast, that sometimes these guys just get put into boxes and it's unfair to them. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening here with Austin Ekeler.
It was super frustrating last year, especially when you have a quarterback like Phillip Rivers. You can use a guy that's just going to catch a lot of passes and just kind of just get rid of the running game. Use Ekeler in this as a screen catcher in the slot and just go from there. We'll see what Tyrod Taylor can do if that's the starter. If it's Justin Herbert, we'll go down the road then. But this is not a great day for Eckler's fantasy value moving forward.
Let's jump to number 7. Bruce Arians had about 100 quotes on the quarterback position and Jameis Winston specifically. Here's one that stood out to me. This is from Greg Allman, who's a beat writer with the Bucs. Asked for examples of NFL quarterbacks he'd pick up the phone for in free agency. Bruce Arians said Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers is another guy. We'll see. There have been other quotes here, Hayden, and I wish I could run through like all of them here on Bruce. He went on NFL Network and said that he knows what he's doing at the quarterback position, but hasn't told Jameis Winston what he's going to do at quarterback. He's also said that he hasn't made up his mind about what he's going to do at the quarterback position. I don't know what to think here, and I really don't know what to think of Bruce Arians since the 2019 season, but this is a massive decision, not just for this year, but moving forward with Jameis Winston.
I do wonder if they're just going to slap the tag on him and then just go for it this year, and then we'll see moving forward after that. But yeah, they're in a tough spot. I'm not sure how long Bruce Arians wants to go as the coach without all this uncertainty moving forward. So they clearly don't love him. That's one thing we've gathered here. I'm not sure what their options are going to be. They pick in the middle of the draft. Maybe Jordan Love's kind of the guy that's always in the middle of they talk about, or if they can get a Phillip Rivers, maybe a Tom Brady. But I'm kind of envisioning Jameis Winston ending up back there when it's all said and done. Who knows?
I mean, look, quote unquote, he could be. Arians said, "When I know who else is available, we should know a lot next week." It's like he just wants to know who else might be, one, they're interested in, but two, is interested in them as well. So maybe that's how he's hiding his cards, right? Because maybe he really wants Phillip Rivers, but Phillip Rivers is very determined to go to Indianapolis. You know, Tom Brady's not going to go to Tampa Bay. All these things match up because it takes two to tango with these free agent signings.
Right, and that's why I think Winston ultimately will be back, just because the other quarterbacks have other spots. The one thing the Bucs do have is you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And if you're a quarterback, I'm not sure if Bridgewater actually fits in the system over there, but if you're a quarterback like an Andy Dalton that wants to take a shot, that would be the place I would want to go.
Number 9, Houston Texans head coach Bill O'Brien. And he's not just the head coach. I mean, he is the GM, basically. He, again, continues to be Thanos in Houston. He revealed that he would not be calling plays in 2020.
Yeah, Tim Kelly's an excellent football coach. So Tim was a graduate assistant at Penn State. My first 2 years there, came to Houston, was a coaching assistant on offense, tight end coach, offensive coordinator, worked very closely with the offensive line when he was a coaching assistant and a tight end coach. Very hardworking guy, guy that really cares about the players. The players really respect him, does a great job in the meeting room, on the practice field, does a great job on game day. He's just an excellent coach, and we have a great relationship. He's a great person, and we're excited for him to take the next step in his career here. He's going to coach the quarterbacks. He'll call the plays, and he'll do an excellent job.
Hayden, I never heard of Tim Kelly prior to that statement from Bill O'Brien. He does have Wikipedia. I do want people to know he's another Eastern Illinois product. Sean Payton was one. Jim Garoppolo was one. Tony Romo was one. Yes, Bill O'Brien mentioned that with the Houston Texans, Tim Kelly started as an offensive quality control coach back in 2014, then moved over to assistant OL coach, tight ends coach, offense coordinator. Basically, hey, this is a massive development because while Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, et cetera, have been super explosive, I'm not sure how much of that or how much we should give credit for Bill O'Brien for that.
Yeah, I'm not going to put too much on them. It's just these guys are so explosive. Everything just kind of been up and down and just waiting for Deshaun Watson. Sometimes in the fourth quarter, we looked in the playoff game against the Bills, just waiting around, and then all of a sudden Deshaun has to make plays. And maybe they iron this out. I'm not sure how much power a 33-year-old offensive coordinator under Bill O'Brien's going to have. We will actually have to wait on that, but I'm at least interested.
I'm very intrigued, and we opened this conversation with the Bills saying how consistent they are week to week to week. We know who they are. The opposite is true with Houston Texans, right? They are a roller coaster. They might have a great first quarter, then completely tank it the next three quarters. And I think so much of that, when you look in isolation, so many of the primary reads aren't open for Deshaun Watson. He hits his back foot, then has to continue to hold the football. Some of that's on him, but I would say some of that's on the play designer and the play caller, because you see it across the league. Players hitting their back foot, and there are open receivers in the middle of the field, and it feels like Deshaun just hasn't had that easy offense yet in his career, and hopefully this happens. But we've also seen Bill O'Brien have a short leash with a lot of new people in his organization.
Yeah, this could end up being the fall guy if this season doesn't work out and he's canned after this year. But yeah, just with Deshaun Watson, so talented, DeAndre Hopkins, so talented. Hopefully we get a Will Fuller. That does explain some of the up and downs. But, just get the ball in your best player's hands, and sometimes that took a long time. We're looking at Carlos Hyde with 20 touches a game for a good chunk of the year last year, and that's not something I would want to be doing when I got Deshaun Watson as my quarterback.
Yeah, it's not just this OC change. It's obviously figuring out if Will Fuller is someone that they want to count on in 2020, and how many other pieces can you even find like him to make sure you don't have to rely on someone like Will Fuller. All right, two more. Number 9. This is from Mike Mayock, who is still the general manager of the now Las Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr played at a high level. I'm very happy with Derek Carr. That's an interesting first part of that quote, Hayden, because then the second part might not be as glamorous for Derek Carr supporters, because Mike Mayock also mentioned that, as he said before, he will evaluate every position on our roster, and if there's a chance to upgrade, we will look into that as well. I feel like this is a constant storyline, not just because Hayden, Derek Carr's play, but also our perception of who John Gruden is and how he loves to flirt with quarterbacks out in the open market.
Right, and it's also throw in Las Vegas. I know Derek Carr's his neighbor in Vegas, so we'll have to see with that. And the Raiders have 2 picks in the first round, including in the spot that Jordan Love is projected to go, and that's somebody that they said that they're interested in. I know Jordan Love said that he would want to play for John Gruden. Gruden's always looking around for these guys, and Jordan Love in particular has all those traits that I think Gruden would love. But yeah, I don't see Derek Carr as the long-term Raiders quarterback.
And he's on a very, I wouldn't say affordable contract right now, Derek Carr, but it's one that if they wanted to get out of, they could definitely get out of it. If they just cut Derek Carr, they save over $13.5 million this year. If they trade him, it's $16.5 million. Again, one domino needs to fall in this quarterback carousel for us to have a really exciting offseason.
Yep.
It didn't happen with Drew Brees. Maybe it does happen with the Las Vegas Raiders and Derek Carr. All right, let's close it out with the Cleveland Browns bringing back both Odell Beckham and Kareem Hunt. We knew the Odell Beckham one, but it was interesting to me at least how Andrew Berry, their new GM, Kevin Stefanski, we said in that press conference as well, spoke highly of Odell. And it makes sense. I mean, obviously Barry had been in the organization for a little bit, not while Odell was there, though. But you also have Stefanski probably watching from afar and wishing he had, and he did. I mean, it's Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen in Minnesota, but a talent like Odell Beckham. So it's one where it makes sense. I just love seeing new people in charge also getting behind good players on their own teams.
Right, and doing it early where we don't have to speculate too much further into the offseason here. I mean, it just comes down to Baker Mayfield struggled last year, and you can't get rid of Odell Beckham Jr. when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract trying to make it up in this league. So Odell's back, Jarvis is back, Kareem Hunt we'll get back. They also have Nick Chubb. So the offense isn't going to be changing too much outside of just the coordinator.
Are you concerned of that? Because, I mean, this wasn't a good offense last year.
Right. I mean, we'll see what the coaching staff does about this. I don't know. You just got to let Baker go through his struggles and just see where he's at. That's where it ultimately is going to come down to.
Well, I asked that question because it wasn't Odell Beckham's fault. Like, that's not why they were bad last year.
He also had the groin injury.
Great. Hernia, I mean, I believe he had surgery at the end of the year. I mean, it wasn't Odell's problem. It was, one, the offensive line. I was actually talking with Nathan Zagura of the Cleveland Browns before we started recording this. And they are constantly looking at offensive tackles right now. Just the fan bases. It would be shocking if they don't draft at least 2 offensive linemen in this class. And you can fix that part. But I always go back to this. It wasn't just the offensive line that was an issue in Cleveland last year. When they played well, when the play call was good, it was Baker Mayfield as well. And Baker did not have good moments when everyone else played well around him. And that's something that cannot happen in year 3.
No, it can't. And he was probably like the 25th best quarterback in the league, and that's just not going to cut it. He needs to take a step forward this year. Hopefully there's more stability. I'm excited with Stefanski. I was really impressed by Andrew Berry's press conference. One thing they did note about the offensive tackles is they were looking for movement skills, and that's something I always like with your offensive line. Get these guys moving a little bit. And Baker just has to play better under pressure. We'll see.
It's funny with Andrew Berry because everyone's considering him like this analytics-driven stats guy. I mean, he played college football, was like an all-conference college football player. I think he has that label because he came into the organization with Sashi Brown, and so everyone just kind of lumped him in there. But Andrew Berry is very, very, very much what you do on the field driven in terms of his evaluations.
Yeah, he's still very calculated, and I believe he got his master's in computer science, and he was an econ guy.
Imagine just acknowledging all information and believing you can make a better decision if you think that more information is better than less. Maybe that's what Andrew Berry's doing.
And even if he is an analytics-focused guy, you have all the rest of the people in the organization, your head coach, all these guys aren't going to be that way. Maybe a little balance helps out the Browns.
We didn't say anything about Kareem Hunt. Do we want to say anything? Because he looked awesome in the receiving game in the second half of the year, but we don't know how they're going to be used in tandem. Obviously, Dalvin Cook ran a ton for Kevin Stefanski. We would expect Nick Chubb to have that role. They did incorporate, Mike Boone, Alexander Madison in places last year in Minnesota. I'm not going to say it's a carbon copy of the same offense, but Kareem Hunt's still going to have a role, and he's still a super talented player, and on a restricted free agent deal will be very, very affordable.
Yeah, both the head coach and the GM also just saying he just needs to stay focused. They still believe in him as long as he's doing the right thing. So,
all right, that's going to do it for us. That's, day 1 of the 2020 NFL Combine?
Day 1.
It's a long day, Hayden Winks. If you can't tell, I'm a little tired. We're going to be back here tomorrow. We have a bunch of great media conversations, interviews, even more prospect stuff.
Yeah, more NFL draft stuff.
We have to make another show tomorrow, Hayden. We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
One more time.
All right, that's going to do it for us. That's Hayden Winks. I'm Josh Norris. We'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.